Back in August of 2017, Scott released The Freddy Files, a gameplay and theory guide to the FNAF games and novels that had been released up until that point. In case you're unfamiliar with it, The Freddy Files visualizes gameplay mechanics like power usage and animatronic pathways, while also noting some of the more popular theories surrounding the franchise. When The Freddy Files was first released, I remember thinking it was going to be our saving grace. I believe Scott had carefully selected the information to be placed in the book, and that every detail of it, from the precise ratios of power usage to the specific fan theories he chose to mention, was handcrafted to give us the exact clues we needed to figure out the lore. Of course, that isn't how it ended up working out, and despite the fact that it's had multiple updated editions released since its first edition in 2017, no one really even talks about it anymore. And I don't know if that's because we hit a wall with decoding it, or if people just didn't believe there was much to decode, but either way, the Freddy Files kind of just faded into obscurity. It's not like we got nothing out of it at the time. This line caused MatPat to theorise about the earlier days of the franchise, and that has since proven successful, now that we're starting to get a better idea of Fazbear Entertainment's carnival origins. But other than that though, the Freddy Files didn't really tell us much, so we abandoned it. However, one thing I've learned over the years is that nothing in this franchise should ever be discarded. Saved for later, absolutely, because we don't always have the right information at the time to decode the clues. But that information does inevitably come later down the line. So it's always worth revisiting things like the Freddy Files because we may now be in a position to figure them out. And I think I have. And before we go any further, I want to clarify that for this video, unless otherwise specified, I'm referring to the first edition of the Freddy Files. There's no particular reason for this other than there isn't much difference between each edition, and I think for consistency's sake, it's worth just sticking to one edition rather than jumping all over the place. When Security Breach was first released, we struggled to figure out exactly what it was telling us. Theorists eventually figured out that it was because of the game's use of environmental storytelling. Things weren't said to us explicitly like they had been back when Phone Guy told us about the Bite of 87 or the multiple and simultaneous springlock failures. Things were now implied, shown, suggested. It was a different method of storytelling than what we were used to, so it took us a while to wrap our heads around it. And this is why we struggled with the Freddy Files as well. Despite the importance that past me gave to the words of the book, they're not actually that relevant. In fact, they're more often used as a distraction to keep us spinning our wheels instead of picking up on the actual clues. What we should be focusing on is the design and visual storytelling of the book. If you're like me, you probably dismissed the design of the book as just a clever play on the title. It's called The Freddy Files, and it's designed like a criminal investigation folder. Seems straightforward enough. Perhaps you even went a step further and thought it was designed this way because it made us, as the reader, feel like we were investigating the series as though it was a criminal investigation. But no. It's designed as a criminal investigation folder because that's exactly what it is. It's not just the covers. Every page in this book is designed to look like either a collection of information contained in a folder, notes taken in someone's journal, or a corkboard demonstrating the perceived connections between different pieces of information from each game. The pages are annotated with pen and sticky notes at various different points, and the words are typed in a font meant to mimic handwriting. More damning than anything, though, is the stamp right there on the front cover, under Official Inquiry. Official Inquiry refers to the process of investigation and approval by an authority. That could be the police, the government, etc. These files are likely being investigated by the police. But why? Well, these files are possibly a reflection of the actual criminal investigation occurring as a result of the deaths and disappearances surrounding the Freddy Fazbear franchise. In some way, I think the Freddy Files might actually be canon. Now, I'm not saying that the Freddy Files demonstrates that all the games and novels themselves are explicitly canon. I don't think that the novels exist within the game's universe. But what I am suggesting is that the Freddy Files are an equivalent to what the police would be investigating in-universe. For example, in Five Nights at Freddy's 2, Phone Guy says this.
Oh hey, before I go, I wanted to ease your mind about any rumors you might have heard lately. You know how these local stories come and go and seldom mean anything. I can personally assure you that whatever is going on out there, however tragic it may be, has nothing to do with our establishment. It's just all rumor and speculation, people trying to make a buck, you know.
And what is theorizing about lore but kind of spreading rumours about the series? So I think that the pieces of fan theories included in the Freddy files represent the rumours people spread about what was happening regarding Freddy's. Another example is that the maps of locations from the first 5 games, not including FNAF World, are actually maps of locations kept as a record in the investigation file. However, I think that the annotations of the animatronic pathways are there more for our benefit, or for distraction, than for any in-universe investigation purposes. Of course, this idea gets a little more complicated when we get to the section on the novels. I don't believe that the novels are canon to the game's universe, yet there are distinct design features of this section that make me think some aspect of them exists. Mostly, it's things like the sketches of animatronic parts and the drawings of the characters and animatronics. Both of these styles of drawings are done on the same type of paper, a brown sketchbook paper, that is distinctly different from any of the other paper used in the rest of the Freddy files. Most pictures of moments from the games are designed to look like actual photographs, but the characters from the books are drawn. One possible explanation is that they're sketch artist renditions of actual people that exist in the games, like Charlie, but that explanation falls flat when we think of how John and the other characters from the novels are drawn here and yet, to our knowledge, don't exist in the games. A second explanation involves the detailed drawing of what looks to be a circuit board of sorts, hidden underneath these papers and complete with alchemy symbols noted on the side. This is drawn in the same old brown sketch paper as the pictures of characters, so it's likely that whoever drew one drew the other. Alchemy in the context of FNAF always reminds me of The Alchemist's Fantasy, the song playing in the Security Puppet minigame, a game about Charlie's death and subsequent possession of the puppet. Considering alchemy has long been associated with attempts to find the elixir of immortality or to create life from nothing, it makes sense that these symbols are here for similar reasons. It's possible these sketches belonged to a game universe Henry as he worked out how to bring his daughter back to some form of life, and that they were collected to be part of an evidence file at some point throughout the decades-long investigation. And I do mean decades long. One of the most notable things about the Freddy files is the damage done to the folder and its contents. Seriously, this thing is a mess. The edges of the pages are worn, ripped, and painfully dirty. There's coffee and bloodstains all over the pages, there's a giant glob of pizza sauce over here, and many of the pages have simply darkened with age. But some pages are pristine, or very near enough. The notes on each section of the Freddy files are more recent, marked only by single coffee stains or clean folds in the paper. Additionally, some of the notes added to the corkboards also look brand new. Think about it. If Charlie was the first to go missing, that means some form of this investigation folder would have started in 1983. At the very least, pages like the sketches of Charlie and the circuit boards would have come into existence around 1984, explaining their aged appearance. The missing children's incident then happens in 1985, then the bite of 87 2 years later, and then the potential reopening of the case in 2015 with the advent of Fazbear's Fright, the horror attraction. And side note, yes, I believe FNAF 3 took place in 2015. Go and watch this video by Gibby's Horror Homestead for further explanation. And even if the opening of Fazbear's Fright, the horror attraction, didn't reopen the case, the disappearances that start happening at Freddy Fazbear's Mega Pizzaplex certainly would have. It does make me wonder though, as we learn more lore from the release of the new games, how are the people investigating Freddy's discovering more evidence for old investigations? What is it that allows them to put the pieces together? In Help Wanted, we learned this.
They lied to us. They lied to all of us. They told us that the whole point of this VR game was to undo the bad PR done by a rogue indie game developer who supposedly made up a bunch of crazy stories that tarnished the brand. But that's not true at all. Fazbear Entertainment hired the game developer. Those indie games were designed to conceal and make light of what happened. This isn't just an attempt to rebrand. It's an elaborate cover-up, a campaign to discredit everything.
Many of us took this to mean that the first 4 FNAF games were these in-universe games made by the indie developer, and that we shouldn't take their lore so seriously. We treated this like a retcon, giving ourselves permission to discredit the much older FNAF lore as we felt it contradicted the newest lore. However, theorists like Gibby disagree, believing instead that it's the 8-bit minigames from FNAF 2, 3 and 4 that were the work of the rogue indie game developer. Since re-examining the Freddy files, I agree. I mentioned earlier that the difference between the drawings of Charlie and the other pictures of the games included in the Freddy files is that the first look like sketches, while the second look like real photographs. And barring a few rare exceptions, all of the photographs in the Freddy files are of the 3D animated parts of the game, and not the 8-bit minigames. The majority of the 8-bit minigame pictures come from these kinds of pages. And there's some very specific design choices on these pages that tell us a lot about the information on them. Notice the keyboard in the top left-hand corner, and the fact that these pages are typed rather than presented in a handwriting-like font. Also notice that the pictures appear as part of the page, as if you embedded an image into a Word document before printing it. These pages are also free from damage, age, and stains, implying that they are more recent inclusions in the folder. It would make sense that these pages would be newly typed and printed if the 8-bit minigames represented are the indie developers' games that have been more recently released. But then, why would they be investigating these games? I can't imagine any police force in the real world looking through video games in order to find clues about a decades-old mystery. Of course, it could be that because the rogue game developers' games do touch on some genuine evidence, however muddled it may be, they decided to investigate anyway. Or perhaps one particular police officer thought it was worth investigating in his own time. Or maybe there's more to this investigation than just trying to catch the bad guy. Maybe someone involved in compiling this evidence has an ulterior motive. At the start of this video, I offhandedly mentioned pages 8 and 9, pages that went into great detail about the power usage in the first game. I was confident when the book first released that there was a clue hidden somewhere in these numbers. Why break down the power usage so thoroughly if it didn't mean anything? Of course, I realise now that there's no secret message hidden within these pages. There's no secret code, nor is the one clue we need to solve the lore hidden in these numbers. Yet these pages aren't meaningless. This level of detail is not for nothing. It is intentional. It's a distraction. This might sound obvious, but I feel that it's something we need to be reminded of. Scott is trying to hide his clues, and one of the best ways to do that is to have our attention focused on something else so that we miss the very humble and understated real clue that is otherwise staring us right in the face. He does this very frequently throughout the franchise, especially in the books, and I'm going to touch on it again in some of my later videos. However, the one that's important here is this. On page 9, a little sketch has been done, and there's sketches like this all throughout the Freddy files, but this one in particular is important, because it's not the only time we've seen it. We saw it again a year later upon the release of the survival logbook down at the bottom of page 79. This drawing also has the word power written above it, referencing back to the pages on power in the Freddy files. It would seem that Mike is a fairly consistent man. And it's not just the drawings. Throughout the Freddy files, Mike's red pen has circled, underlined, and commented on different aspects of the franchise, and this shows us two things. One, he is knowledgeable about the reality of the franchise, as he demonstrates awareness of the irony of this statement, and two, he has relatively dark sense of humour about the animatronics coming to life and killing people, and we see both of these things reflected in the survival logbook as well. More than any other character in this franchise, perhaps even more than William Afton himself, Mike's character is remarkably consistent. This is another factor I'm going to be carrying forward into subsequent videos. Mike, as the most well-fleshed out character, will be my continuous grounding point for a lot of these theories. And the fact that these traits about Mike that we learned from the survival logbook, red pen, drawings, a dark sense of humour, and a deep knowledge about the reality of Freddy's, are consistent with the Freddy files, I fully believe that Mike has at least had some sort of a hand in creating the Freddy files in the first place. But why? And does this mean that Mike is actually a cop, in addition to being a security guard? I don't know if he's a cop. I'll be honest, I don't really think so. But I will say that Vanessa, who has always been shown to be a security guard in games, was a cop in the movies, so it is possible if unlikely. I will also say that this drawing here of the badge and torch given to represent Clay Burke from the novels does make me wonder if our purple man here, who may or may not be William Afton, emphasis on the may not, is holding a torch. It's not the right shape, that's true, but it might make sense when you combine it with the large badge on his chest. Still, even if Mike isn't a police officer, there may be a reason he is compiling evidence, and particularly why he cares about the rogue indie game developers' games. According to the most popular versions of the lore, Mike's whole story arc is either working his way around the franchise to help his father, or working his way around the franchise to put to rest all of the agony his father caused. Part of this involves him working on freeing the souls by using these 8-bit minigames as a means to put the pieces back together. Especially in FNAF 3, Mike works on ensuring that the crying child receives their happiest day so that the children can all be freed. And this requires a deep knowledge of the games and unlocking the secrets in order for him to do that. So the pages about the retro arcade could be Mike's process of figuring out how the games work so that he could do such a thing in the first place. And just for the sake of being thorough and trying to explain as much as I can with this method, I want to talk about one of the most prominent things that's missing from the Freddy files: FNAF World. This could simply be Scott not wanting to acknowledge it, or it could be for a specific lore reason. FNAF World is referred to as the flip side, and it is showing us what is happening on the inside of the games as Mike works on the outside to put the pieces together. The clocks we find throughout FNAF World are the minigames Mike completes. We are helping him, or working with him at least, even without Mike's knowledge. And that's the thing. Mike would have no knowledge that anything is happening inside the game. Mike doesn't know that the game is, on some level, sentient, and is working with him to help achieve the crying child's happiest day. Therefore, Mike doesn't know about FNAF World. And if he doesn't know about it, he can't note any evidence or clues about it in the Freddy files. So it simply doesn't appear. Okay, I think it's best that I leave this video here. To quickly summarise, the Freddy files is likely a canon investigation folder filled with evidence from the investigation of the deaths and disappearances surrounding Fazbear Entertainment. It is likely put together by police officers or detectives, though Mike, who may or may not be a police officer, though likely isn't, has played a role in collating this evidence based on the familiar drawings and commentary given in red pen. Mike's personal motive for putting this evidence together ties into his goals across the series, to either help his father or to put to rest the agony his father caused. Mike is, of course, particularly interested in putting the crying child to rest. If you have any questions or criticisms, please leave them in the comments below. This is my first theory video and I'm still learning a lot, so there's probably going to be things that sound messy or don't have proper evidence or that I didn't explain very well, but I promise I'll get better with time. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.